First, let me say thank you and good afternoon to everyone. I'm truly grateful and humbled to be with you all here today. My name is Herman Jenkins. I'm the Trails Manager at Friends of Rouge. Friends of Rouge is a nonprofit watershed conservancy. Our mission is to restore and protect the Rouge River watershed, and we do this through stewardship, collaboration, and education. The Rouge is located in southeast Michigan, and it is the most urban watershed in the state, encompassing three counties, 43 municipalities, including much of the city of Detroit. The Rouge watershed encompasses all four tributaries of the Rouge River that flow southeast and coalescing at its main stem as the river drains into the Detroit River. The watershed includes 476 miles, 400 lakes, impoundments pond, 127 river miles, 570 with tributaries. It also includes 20,000 acres of parkland, 300 parks, 27 nature preserves. Friends of Rouge began paddling the Rouge in 2003, and the idea was, what better way to build allies for the river than to get people out on the river paddling? The challenge is that there are few access points on the Lower Rouge where levels are typically high enough to sustain paddling. And people still believe that if you get into the Rouge River, you might melt. It's not true unless you have a fetish for ruby slippers. So, it's going back as far as its indigenous roots. The Rouge has always been seen as a working river. The growth of cities and onset of industrialization, coupled with few regulations, led to a Rouge River that was channelized, its natural meanders eliminated, and the river was so polluted that in 1969 the river actually caught on fire. Friends of the Rouge was founded in 1986, and it sponsored its first Rouge Rescue Volunteer event. And thanks to the work of organizations like Friends of the Rouge and stakeholder partners, the Rouge River is being greatly restored. Cleanups, monitoring, supporting environmental legislative policy that enhances stewardship have led to great successes. And since the passing of the Clean Water Act 50 years ago, the river is now safe enough for paddle sports. It's a river where the sensitive fish like the red-side dace has returned. There are thousands of trees, Friends of the Rouge and volunteers have planted, countless invasive plant species removed, and then beaver are returning to the watershed and other signs that demonstrate that the work we do matters and can make a difference. We also understand that there are antiquated CSOs that still dump wastewater into the river. We can't sustain the gains that we've made to revive life in the watershed if these issues are not addressed and done so in an equitable way. It's no secret that the majority of antiquated systems for handling storm and wastewater are in areas where Black and Brown people live, and other people who have been historically left out or whose communities suffer from longstanding histories of racism and or disinvestment. So we have to look at this through a lens of equity. So here we see some of the outcomes of the work of Friends of the Rouge and its volunteers and sponsor and community partners. And you may ask, well, why do we do this work? And sure, the easy answer is it's the right thing to do, to be a better steward of your environment. But our goal is to, really, quite honestly, restore these undervalued assets back to the people, back to communities, for their recreational enjoyment. Research shows that, people are healthier when there's meaningful access to outdoor recreation and nature in their community. And I'm inspired to do this work because, my children will have a different relationship and be the beneficiaries of a greatly restored Rouge River. The Lower Rouge Water Trail is an urban water trail, and it is in many ways a tale of two different worlds. As you can see, looking at this picture, it's a picture from the upstream section of our water trail, and it's more like paddling somewhere in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. There are great blue heron and deer and wild turkey and snapping turtles, and it truly is picturesque and spectacular. And then you can paddle the industrial channel, and it's a journey through the history of industry and manufacturing in Detroit. Bottom left is a picture of the original Ford Rouge manufacturing complex. The trail will span 29 miles in total in 10 cities from Canton to the Detroit River, and in parallel, the Rouge Gateway Greenway will fill in gaps and connect Lower Rouge communities to the larger regional network of trails, including the Joe Louis Greenway, Downriver Link Greenways, Iron Bell Trail, the Great Lakes Way as well. This map shows the planned and existing launch points on our water trail. As many of us know here today, blueways can help improve the health and quality of life by providing places for exercise and recreation and community gatherings. The Rouge River watershed is an industrialized region with high rates of chronic disease and historic disinvestment in social and environmental conditions. The purpose of our conversation today is to describe the processes taken to develop an equitable, community-driven vision and approach for developing a water trail along the Lower Rouge River, and identify some of the key elements that emerged. Um, Community engagement throughout this process was intentional and inclusive of racially and ethnically diverse voices. The spectrum of the spectrum of public participation guided the project to inform, consult, involve, collaborate, and empower residents to be part of the decision-making process. This approach centers those affected by a decision with the right to be involved in the decision-making process with a promise that the public contribution will influence the decision. The model promotes sustainable decisions by communicating all the needs of all the interested participants, including the decision makers. The Lower Rouge River Water Trail Leadership Committee evolved through this process model, and we engaged the public and those affected by the decisions with a transparent, fact-based process, and the public is given equal status and shares in decision-making authority. This approach led to the development of the 2019 Water Trail Strategic Plan that incorporated community-informed recommendations for capital improvements and fostered the development of key relationships and coalitions that provided a vehicle for ongoing community engagement and ownership. The Lower Rouge Water Trail Leadership Committee is the vehicle we use to connect people to the river, to connect people to this vision, to be champions in their community, to do the heavy lifting. They're scheduling paddle trips, promotional and educational collateral materials, meeting people where they are at community events. No element of the process equation works without people who are willing to do the work and also have the capacity and resources to do the work. This graphic illustrates, our process for trails development in action with the related outcomes. Friends of the Rouge chairs the Lower Rouge Water Trail Leadership Committee, and the committee includes municipalities, community organizations, businesses, passionate individuals, Wayne County Parks, as much as the trail runs through Wayne County Parks property. The committee meets bi-monthly and leverages its collective resources and capacity to seek state, federal, and private grant funding to advance the effort. Now, our strategic plan, details the elements of building a water trail as access, safety plan, signage plan, and sustainability. And our focus for today is going to be on access. There's a great need for new built environment on Lower Rouge, as currently there are no universally accessible launches on the Lower Rouge River. We'll explore how work groups formalize within the Water Trail Leadership Committee around segments of the strategic plan or a singular multi-purpose trailhead, and how this strategy allows us to collectively advance the trail piece by piece. In the Rouge, there are two major barriers to access. The first is infrastructure. This here is a rendering of the planned universally accessible boat launch at Kesey Fieldhouse in Melvindale. And this is the goal for each of the identified launch sites on our trail. This is the holy grail of river access on the Rouge. We received a design access grant from the Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan to complete design development for this launch. The project is being funded by American Rescue Plan Act funding and FY23 funding through the Office of Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. The project will completely transform the existing boat launch there and create access in this historic section of the river for paddlers of all abilities. The second barrier on the Rouge is log jams. They must be monitored, cleaned, and open so that they're passable by canoe or kayak. It's difficult work. It's a perpetual problem because of the flashy nature of the Rouge River, heavy rains and stormwater runoff, increased water levels and current, and that can uproot trees that fall in and block the river. Wayne County Parks has remediated many of the largest log jams within their parks on the trail, and we work to complement that with volunteer work days outside of the Wayne County Parks property footprint, as each municipality has varying capacity to handle woody debris management. So we bring small work teams, each with a role. A few members of our staff and volunteers are experienced with chainsaws, and we remove as much trash and floating debris as possible to create a boat path 6 to 8 feet. So it's pretty exciting work, but it's hard and messy work as well. And of course, all wood in the river isn't bad because it's habitat for fish and other wildlife. So we have to manage wood in the river in an environmentally friendly way. Now, across the 9 communities on the water trail, we found people with the will, the hope, and the desire. But they're also bound by circumstances that could lead to the feeling that there's just no way that this could happen in their community. So from a trails perspective, creating equity and contributing to this mission is about creating access. There are communities in which I'm working to promote our trails work where some people don't even know the river is there, set aside from the fact that you can actually have access to paddle line. They don't know the river belongs to them. Communities in the industrial channel like South Dearborn, Detroit, and River Rouge are cut off from the river by walls of industry that keep the river out of sight and therefore out of mind. So a lot of my work is building connections to the river, helping people build a relationship with the river because people will take care of something that they care about. The true mission is stewardship. Access also means a seat at the table, to determine how new elements, of a plan, of a vision can best impact people in the communities along the trail where they live. It means building the capacity of community organizations and municipalities who do not have the resources to dedicate towards building on this vision, but do understand the impact a world-class destination water trail can have on their community. So let's explore a couple of Lower Rouge water trail projects and learn a little bit more about these communities where they're taking place and how they evolve to get a clear picture. And you'll see how within the Lower Rouge Water Trail Leadership Committee, projects can grow from the top down, from the bottom up, and from the middle out. The idea of a water trail and network of connected greenways on the Lower Rouge is not new. The vision was iterated nearly 20 years ago in the 2005 Rouge Gateway Greenway Master Plan. Through the leadership committee, the Rouge Gateway Greenway Work Group in the city of Dearborn evolved. The group includes Wayne County Parks, Ford Land Development, Friends of the Rouge, the city of Dearborn, the Henry Ford Museum, as well as the University of Michigan Dearborn. Inspired by the 2005 master plan, if you fast forward to today, the group has completed design development for the second of 9 phases of this trail project. The Rouge Gateway Greenway Phase 2 will connect U of M Dearborn and the Henry Ford Museum over 1.9 miles of asphalt trail. The total project cost estimated at $6.9 million. The team has already received a $2.7 million grant for construction of Phase 2 of the trail and to facilitate design development of Phase 3. The city of Dearborn has also prepared a MDNR trust fund grant to fund installation of universally accessible kayak launches in Dearborn. That grant also will cover remediation of some of the largest log jams and a log jam monitoring program in Dearborn as well. There's ongoing coordination with the EPA and Army Corps on habitat restoration in the concrete channel. About 4 miles of the Rouge is actually encased in concrete in Dearborn as part of a 70s era federal infrastructure project to reduce flooding. Now the EPA and the Army Corps has returned to undo some of its work and restore some of the natural wetlands and upland habitat, even oxbows. It's an amazing opportunity, and we're delighted to work in tandem with the EPA and Army Corps on some of this work. You can see here, this is one of the planned restoration projects in Oxbow and 2 pedestrian trail bridges. And these are just different perspective renderings, even this street level view. So, hey, hooray for Dearborn. They've done an awesome job. And I'm not even being sarcastic here. There's tremendous excitement. Surely the city has benefited from its corporate partner relationships, the stable tax revenue, and the staff capacity to act on and benefit from every aspect of trails development. And this is a virtual all-star team of interested parties, graced with the resources, experience, staff capacity, etc. And it's made the process advance very smoothly and quickly in the city of Dearborn. Certainly problems arise, but the mechanism to manage these issues are secure. Government agencies between Wayne County and the city of Dearborn assume major roles in maintenance and upkeep of the trail as well. But this process differs from municipality to municipality. Southwest Detroit is a majority minority community mixed with African Americans and a diverse and vibrant Hispanic population, along with communities of immigrants, particularly Arab Muslims from the Middle East and other parts of the world. The neighboring city of Dearborn has the largest population of Arab Muslims outside of the Middle East. Southeast Michigan and Southwest Detroit were particularly hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. According to SimCog, 30% of African Americans and 40% of Hispanic Americans experienced joblessness, loss of income during the COVID-19 pandemic. And a significant number of businesses have been forced to close in Southwest Detroit and South Dearborn because they were unable to adjust to the pressures created by the pandemic. The 4th Street Bridge Park multipurpose trailhead is situated at the border of West Detroit and South Dearborn at the foot of the 4th Street Bridge. It's the site of the 1932 Hunger March, where 5 Ford workers were killed protesting for worker rights. The area is heavily entrenched with industry. The 48217 zip code is one of the most polluted in the nation. The EPA has publicly shamed and fined resident corporate polluters for air quality violations. There's legacy pollution, contaminated sediment requiring remediation. And the city of Detroit is a much larger city with a much larger riverfront on the Detroit River to cover. Yet, the Ford Rouge Gateway Partnership, or the FROG Group, is one of the oldest community work groups active on the Rouge in South of Detroit. The FROG includes the city of Detroit, River Rouge, Downriver Link Greenways, Friends of Detroit River, Downriver Delta Community Development Corporation, and many citizen stewards as well. The FROG is chaired by U of M Dearborn professor and community activist Dr. Paul Draus. And similar to the Dearborn Work Group, there's strong leadership at the top. And this work group is also inspired by the '05 Rouge Gateway Master Plan that they meet monthly. And its work actually resulted in the completion of 4th Street Bridge Park Phase 1. 4th Street Bridge Park was identified as a critical access point between two existing launches, Melvin Dale's Kesey Fieldhouse in River Rouge and Bellinger Park. The current paddle between the two launches is about 2.5 hours to complete. So even for a healthy, fit adult, that can be a bit of a struggle. 4th Street Bridge Park sits halfway between those two launches and will offer safe access to rest, enter the river for a more modest paddling experience. Since the ribbon was cut officially on Phase 1 in October of 2020, people are using the park, to rest or view freighters as a magnet for anglers who are out there catching fish, and locals seeking, family-friendly activities and gatherings in their own neighborhood. And of course, the trailhead needs to be maintained, grass cut, trash picked up. How do we sustain, what's been developed? 4th Street Bridge Park is a good example of how our process model, uplifts members, emboldens members of the stakeholder group to work together. The municipal partner participates, but is limited in the resources it will leverage to serve the group. So unlike Dearborn's Rouge Gateway Greenway, there's no city trash pickup, no maintenance services, no city-led recreation programming. Marathon Corporation actually has committed to mow the park lawns, and Downriver Delta weeds the rain gardens and helps coordinate trash pickup. It truly is a community-led, community-driven process. FROG group members coordinate programming and fundraising to support the park. Phase 2 of 4th Street Bridge Park will feature a universally accessible kayak launch inset in an engineered inlet outside of the shipping channel, boardwalk for viewing freighters, as well as a simple roundabout for a boat drop-off. An exciting proposition to think about 4th Street Bridge Park Phase 2 and what it will bring, and it certainly will increase visitation to the area. The challenge for us and this work group is managing corporate partner relationships and expectations, as well as the history of corporate pollution, neglect, disinvestment in the surrounding community. The Marathon Foundation and Gordie Howe National Bridge Company Community Benefits Program donated funding to support the completion of construction documents for 4th Street Bridge Park Phase 2. And that brought the project 100% shovel ready. And there's value in building and nurturing these corporate relationships. It benefits us to have these businesses participate in the process, especially when you have partners that genuinely, value the benefits and outcomes of our success. We have partners who volunteer, donate time, money, services, and our work would be more difficult and likely less impactful without the support, we've garnered from the business community. But it's a fine line, because let's face it, for some corporate polluters, it may be easier to pay the fines and donate to environmental nonprofits than it is to actually fix the problem that's causing the pollution. The challenge for us is the same as it is in any partnership. It's measured by trust, and we've had to be frank with some corporate supporters and say, quite honestly, you can do better. These conversations aren't easy, but they're necessary. And it helps to have an advocacy committee within our board of directors that helps set the guidepost issues and help govern these conversations. The lower branch of the Rouge River flows through 10 cities, all with diverse racial, ethnic populations and socioeconomic factors. Each of these communities once benefited from industrialization linked to the Rouge and Detroit rivers. And many have experienced economic decline, environmental degradation, and depopulation since. And such can be said of the city of Inkster and the city of Westland. With EPA funding, the Alliance of Rouge Communities has been working with Wayne County Parks on area of concern projects on the Lower Rouge in the cities of Inkster and in Westland. These projects are providing much needed habitat restoration in the Rouge River corridor, and the hope is that this focused funding will help confront decades of underinvestment to these communities that have been overburdened with legacy pollution and environmental hazard. Our work seeks to ensure that residents have a voice and participate meaningfully in the process. So the city of Inkster lies 8 miles west of Dearborn in Wayne County. It's a majority African American city, and its median household income is 32,000, which is less than half that of the U.S. median. A third of the city's residents are at or below the poverty line, and 17% of the city's residents under 65 have a disability. That's twice the national average. Inkster is mostly developed with some significant open space remaining along the Lower Rouge River. Now, this is important. Historically, Inkster was part of Buckland Township, a 143 square mile area that included present-day Dearborn, Livonia, Redford, and Westland. Inkster's history with the automobile industry has had a significant impact on its economy and population. During the 1920s, people were drawn to Inkster because it was so close to the Ford manufacturing plant in Dearborn. But Inkster's growth and its subsequent decline is just as tied to racial injustice as it is to the automobile industry. During the 1900s, Ford Motor, headquartered in Dearborn, was one of the few auto industry employers willing to hire African Americans. But racial covenants and other forms of housing discrimination kept them out of Dearborn. Instead, they lived in worker housing constructed in nearby Inkster. The creation of an independent city of Dearborn in 1927, followed by the Great Depression, resulted in the Buckland Township declaring for bankruptcy in 1931, leaving residents of Inkster without electricity and power. Henry Ford provided financial assistance to the township, specifically residents of Inkster, under what became known as the Inkster Project. But this financial support, came with a loss of self-determination and a significant loss of privacy that included house visits to evaluate finances and housekeeping practices and consumption habits. The 1940s again brought prosperity. World War II, wartime production meant increased employment and housing development. The improvements in personal finances, however, had no bearings on race relations in the area or the time. In 1942, Dearborn elected Orville Hubbard as its mayor, one of the most outspoken advocates for segregation and racism in the North. And he served in office for 36 years, strictly enforcing segregation. The city's motto at the time, "Keep Dearborn Clean," was widely interpreted as "Keep Dearborn White." The early 1960s perhaps signified Inkster's peak, population reaching all-time high of close to 40,000 residents. Political reorganization later in the decade resulted in Inkster becoming an independent city in 1968. Within a few years, Inkster's good fortune ran out of fuel, and it became a casualty to the global oil crisis and white flight. Since, Inkster's population has steadily declined, and it is currently at roughly 26,000 residents. Wayne County Parks has developed this preliminary concept of a wellness zone for Inkster Park that includes a kayak launch, as cited in the Lower Rouge Water Trail strategic plan. And this is part of a larger vision Wayne County has to enhance mobility and increase access into Wayne County Park's assets. Because of its limited staff capacity, the city of Inkster had not been represented regularly at Water Trail Leadership Committee meetings. There are state grants to fund construction, but the city had no surplus, no strategy to obtain the required matching funds. So why even bother to engage the process? The National Kidney Foundation and Friends of the Rouge came together to create ways to uplift neighborhood and health benefits of trails and trails access on the Lower Rouge in the communities of Inkster, Wayne, and Westland. Supported by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's REACH program, this unique partnership is helping to foster physical activity by promoting trails use, paddle trips, community connections, and opportunities to explore and restore wildlife habitat within the watershed, which in turn could improve the surrounding residents' health and well-being. The Friends of the Rouge, as part of this, developed the Dry Dock Pop-Up, and it has become a critical and key component to building these community connections. At a Dry Dock Pop-Up, we'll bring a canoe, a kayak, a terrain model of the Rouge watershed, and our Trails Project plans, and we meet people where they are to share this vision. And it's been a great way for us to spread the goodwill and uplift the potential of a destination water trail on the Lower Rouge. We bring the Dry Dock pop-ups to farmers markets, neighborhood events, festivals, schools, wherever it makes sense for us to be, to spread the good news about paddling and outdoor recreation. And the National Kidney Foundation of Michigan has been a great partner in this work, We participated in the Inkster Task Force's farmers market with the Dry Dock pop-up and established a great working relationship with this group. The Inkster Task Force since joined the leadership committee and has been a full participant in the process. We ultimately contracted the Inkster Task Force to facilitate community input and engagement on Wayne County Parks projects in Inkster. We secured a grant to begin design development for the Inkster kayak launch, and we hope that launch will be installed by the end of next paddling season. So now we're building a coalition of volunteers to help clear log jams in Inkster, and we hope to have our very first paddle trip in August of this year. But all of this, bloomed and blossomed through the dry dock pop-up and engaging that relationship with the Inkster Task Force. So very much from the bottom up, we are building a relationship and coalescing of the necessary forces to manifest the water trail in the city of Inkster. The city of Westland is located on the Lower Rouge as well, and the Vinoy Dorsey Park in Westland will soon be home to booking universally accessible kayak launches. Creating trails amenities that celebrate history can also help, refocus the region on the value of not just the river as a natural resource and highlight recreation, but also help interpret past uses. The Norwayne area of the city of Westland is considered a National Historic District. It began in 1942 by the National Housing Agency to provide housing for workers employed at nearby defense plants. When World War II ended, the U.S. government sold these houses to individual residents. And over the years, ownership declined and the area deteriorated further. Many homes became rental properties. And now Norwayne is a diverse yet low-income community. And despite efforts to revitalize the area, challenges still remain. The schools in the area were closed, with one, Jefferson Barnes Elementary, being repurposed now as a community center. The Jefferson Barnes Community and Vitality Center is just north of Vinoy Dorsey Park. The Norwayne Community Citizens Council is a tenant in Jefferson Barnes, and they actively represent Norwayne residents at municipal meetings and public hearings. The NCCC also plans volunteer park cleanups, events, and resource fairs for residents. Now, for the past year, the National Kidney Foundation of Michigan, Friends of the Rouge, Wayne County Parks, the City of Westland, and Norwayne Community Citizens Council have formed the Partners for Places team as a work group within the Water Trail Leadership Committee to gain community input and to the redesign of Vinoy Dorsey Park. This group was funded through the Funders Network's Partners for Places mini grant for 2 years. The team developed and conducted a survey which indicated and prioritized the community's interest and desired park amenities. The NCCC was contracted to organize and share community input and feedback that was collected in previous community engagement efforts. The information was helpful in the development of our survey tool. The NCCC was instrumental in identifying the relevant events, social gatherings, farmers markets, fairs, where the survey could be deployed. And events hosted at Jefferson Barnes Community and Vitality Center were key to having a direct connection to Norwayne residents. The survey was also shared through social media, for Westland youth, people who are living in Westland and the surrounding cities. We got over 320 responses, 54% of which were residents of Westland, and 25% actually lived in the Norwayne Historic District. The survey revealed that there was a strong desire for an accessible pathway connecting Vinoy Dorsey Park to the Norwayne community. This here is an actual rendering of the parking lot and trailhead with the accessible pathway leading into the park. The survey also revealed that there was a significant interest in art to draw visitors into the park. Furthermore, a longstanding goal of the NCCC was to develop a statue of Rouge River to honor the neighborhood's origin as housing for workers at the River Rouge plant during World War II. And several years ago, the NCCC conducted a student contest with the William D. Ford Career Tech Center for design, but they didn't have the expertise or the funding or the opportunity to bring that statue into fruition. So linking this goal and interest of art in the park, indicated in the survey, the Partners for Places team connected with a renowned local artist to actualize this student design. And the team is now mobilizing collective resources to secure the necessary funding to realize this vision. So you can see this little red mark here on our presentation screen, that is the location now marked on the drawings and plans for the proposed Rouge River commemorative gateway monuments. So three different, community models in terms of creating access, but all with the same goal and a measurable outcome. The Lower Rouge River Water Trail and Rouge Gateway Greenway Trail will connect communities and create safe, equitable access for diverse communities to the health, fitness, and recreation opportunities that blueway and greenway trails provide. Through creative placemaking and programming, my hope is that we can spawn a blue economy, so to speak, through a wave of business and workforce development opportunities that can inherently grow from repurposing space. 8 of the 9 planned trailhead projects on the Lower Rouge River Water Trail are 100% shovel ready, with 2 in line for installation in 2023 and 3 in line for 2024. None of this would be possible without the focused, inclusive strategic efforts of Friends of the Rouge, its stakeholder partners, and the Lower Rouge Water Trail Leadership Committee. So I thank you for your time and this opportunity to present, and hope you all enjoy the remainder of the Reimagine River Access Conference. Thank you.